Oh, okay. I just had crumbs on my hazard of working at home. Okay.
No worries. Hello, Teri. How's it going?
Going great.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I'm sure a lot of people can learn from your story, and hopefully we can have a little fun along the way.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Now, I've known you, I think, has it been 5 years now?
Something like that.
And then I met you doing, I was your personal trainer in Buffalo, New York, and then became friends there on after. And along the way, got to know you and your personal story. And of course, got to know your family, which has been great. And of course, today I want to kind of get started with just knowing who you are. And let's start kind of where you grew up, and then we can kind of go from there.
All right. So Buffalo born and raised, suburbs of Buffalo, actually. So haven't ever left, went to college here, went to grad school here, got my job here, have always stayed here in Buffalo. Woo, go Bills. So, yep.
And where did you go to college?
Canisius College.
And what did you go for?
The first time around, I went for organizational communication. I loaded on a minor in classics, and then I went back for my teaching master's about 10 years later after working in the corporate world for a while.
Did you like the corporate world, or did it really shy you away?
I liked it, but it was long hours, and I didn't want to work long hours anymore. So my mother actually suggested teaching. And through the company I worked for, they had an outreach program called Junior Achievement, and community members invited business people into the classroom to talk about things, because kids always listen to people who aren't their teacher. So I would go in and I would talk to the kids about business and finance. And I thought, this is just fantastic. I guess that would be a nice match. So while I was working, I went back and got my master's at Canisius, and got a job in teaching right away, and have been teaching for my 21st year this year.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you teach?
Right now I teach not communications. Right now I teach economics and psychology.
Okay. So along your way, we kind of ran into an issue at some point where you were diagnosed with cancer. And why don't we start with maybe when you had felt like something was different, and then maybe kind of we can go from there.
Okay, so the first thing I will tell your audience is always listen to your body. And I know that is hard because, especially if you're athletic or active, sometimes you're just used to those little aches and pains, and you just think, oh, I just did something too rough, or I haven't stretched enough, or whatever. But where I was enlightened that I had cancer was I had a back issue pain that would not go away. And I had been training for triathlons and doing triathlons. So I just thought that I did it a little too hard. And I recall specifically when I hurt my back, I was pulling a stroller out of the back of my car, not very carefully. So I just thought, oh, I, slipped a disc or pulled a muscle, but it wouldn't go away and wouldn't go away. So I went to my chiropractor over and over again. And he just couldn't help me. It would be okay for a couple of days and then start hurting again. So he sent me for x-rays, and I had an appointment with him sometime after the x-ray appointment. And I was sitting home. I'll never forget it. I was sitting home and my kids were out of the house. And I thought, I'm going to go look at my bones while I have my soup, because that's cool to be able to see your bones on these x-rays that I'll be going over with my chiropractor. And I'm looking at them and eating my soup. And then I get to this one, and there's like this giant golf ball glowing thing off, not near a bone. And I'm like, well, that doesn't look quite right. So I call the chiropractor, and he hadn't had the images yet, but he had the report. And he said, nope, I'm reading the report. There's nothing on here. We'll go over it when you come in. Okay. So I brought the x-rays in my next appointment, and he's showing me, and he gets to the one with the glowing thing, and his face just goes white. He's like, this is not right. Something should be on the report for this. So he sent a message back to the imaging place. They sent a revised report saying, image shows abnormality, follow up with gynecologist. And that was it.
Yeah.
So my gynecologist wasn't really on board with any problem. Long story short, if that's possible, it was my primary doctor after I had just had a routine physical with him. Oh, actually, I went to him to get an MRI slip, and I was telling him, and he was like, "No, blood work now. This is not
Mm.
okay." And then the blood work showed that there was increased in CA125, which was an indicator of cancer, and then went in and had a biopsy that ended up being a 6-hour hysterectomy. And
Wow.
so, long story short, if you feel like something is wrong, never in a million years did I think that that slip disc was cancer, but I knew that it had to be addressed, whether it would be back surgery or whatever. So thankfully, I was diligent in following up, and
Well, of
now,
course, and you were definitely, I mean, good for you for being, I mean, your own advocate, because I think that is super important, and people don't do that enough. I feel people are willing to trust their physician or their doctor, which you should, but sometimes getting a second opinion is also important. But nonetheless, I do want to back up a little bit, and you talked about your training from triathlons and everything. You had been really active before, is that right?
yeah, so I've always been active, but I had gone through a divorce in 2011-ish, and I was using training and these triathlons as a way to keep busy because I had never been without my kids before. So when my ex-husband had my kids, I'm like, I have to have something to do. I'm going to sit in the bedroom and cry. So I might as well train and do something productive. So I wasn't inactive before that. I always walked a lot. I always, would run on the treadmill or go for a jog, but I never did anything with a purpose. It was
Sure.
always just, I wanted to be semi fit and healthy. So I had no indicators. There was no pre-existing things that would be going on in my background that would have been a red flag for ovarian cancer to be on the radar. So I understand why my gynecologist didn't jump right on that diagnosis, but it was unfortunate that she didn't hear whatever all the other doctors were saying. So yes, you do have to be your own advocate, and do not be afraid to leave a doctor that you've been with if they're the outlier and they're not going along with what everyone else is saying, because um, you know safety in numbers, all that.
Of course. And okay, so you've been active before, and then before, were you a health nut for your diet, or were you kind of just going about your life in the normal way in regards to diet, like nutrition?
So I was never like an unhealthy eater. I would have, an ice cream sundae, or I always have just been what they now call intuitive eating. That's like, I've always been that my whole life. Eat when you're hungry, drink when you're thirsty, that kind of thing. So, but my diet, and I'm sure we'll get into it, has definitely evolved, and I'm much happier with what I do now. But I think anybody looking at it from the outside would be like, oh, her diet's always been fine.
Sure.
So
And why was your first inclination to go to the chiropractor?
that's a really good question. Back in 2012, 13, which is when this all happened, late 2013, um, I didn't even know physical therapy was a thing. I thought physical therapy was for people who like had a stroke and needed rehabilitation, and that was ignorance on my part. But I had been sent to a physical therapist before. I had like a neck thing. But I just went to the chiropractor because I thought, oh, back. So it must need, cracking or pushing back in or whatever. So that was my first inclination. Now, knowing what I know from you, and what I've learned and what I've experienced, the chiropractor isn't even on my radar anymore, because every ailment that I've had has been able to be fixed through physical therapy. So I just am an extreme advocate for that.
Of course. And I'm glad that the chiropractor kind of led you in a direction going towards getting an x-ray and getting an image, because who knows if the chiropractor thought, well, I'm just going to try and fix this and, see what we can do. And, you could have gone months without getting that imaging that you needed. And it kind of just shows the importance of referring out when you need to, and maybe
Right.
sure you should pay attention to those red flags because things like that can happen.
Right. And finding, and that's, I just also want to just reinforce, finding a group of health professionals that you can count on, even if they don't work in tandem with one another, that you can piece together, that will refer you out when they can't do any more for you, rather than pretending like, oh, just one more appointment might do it. That's not okay.
Yeah. So you had your chiropractor and then you went to the OB and then you went to somebody else, you said?
Right. So the chiropractor is the one that sent me for the x-ray. In the
Mhm.
meantime, because we thought it was a disc thing, and then honestly, it was a disc thing. I mean, I did have a herniated disc, which was causing the pain. It just happened to be that showed up the cancer. So at once they discovered the cancer, it's like all bets were off with fixing your back. We have to address this first. So it was all kind of fluid, not really chronological. It was all kind of fluid. So I had an x-ray appointment, and then I needed my doctor to give me an MRI slip. The chiropractor couldn't do that.
Right.
So while the x-ray stuff was going on, he's like, you're going to need an MRI. So make an appointment with your primary, which was already in play when the x-rays came back, and it was like whoop whoop whoop. So my primary physician, he is not a warm man, but I just gave him a huge hug when it was all over. I'm like, I don't even care, just I'm gonna lay one on you, because I would not be here right now if it was not for your diligence. So even though he's very stoic, I'm like, too bad.
Too bad. Yeah.
Too bad.
So you go to him and you get the MRI and he issues the blood work. What happens next? Like, what's the next step?
So the next step is the blood work comes back. And as I said, it's a specific blood work that tests for protein in your blood. And it's called a CA-125. And when you have perhaps ovarian cancer, those numbers are elevated. So depending on the blood test, it should be generally under a 35. And mine came back in the hundreds. My gynecologist, who should have known all of this, kept saying, well, it's not in the thousands, so it can't be that bad. And my primary was like, we're not waiting for it to get to the thousands to do a biopsy, because then it's too late. And he basically had an argument over the phone with the gynecologist, forcing the biopsy. So when the blood work came back high, my primary forced a biopsy through the GYN. So
Okay.
I went to made an appointment, and she's like, we're just going to do a quick biopsy. The last thing she said to me as they were rolling me into the operating room was, you'll be home by lunch. I'll never forget it. It was 9:30 in the morning, and she said, we're going to do a quick biopsy. This is nothing. You'll be home by lunch. Just prior to that, I had asked, is my CA-125 higher than it was before? And she goes, yeah, it is. And I had the panic looked on my face. And that's when she said, don't worry, honey, you'll be home by lunch. So I go roll in, anesthesia takes effect. I wake up and it's 3:30 in the afternoon. And even under anesthesia, I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem quite right.
It's definitely not lunchtime.
I don't know where we are, but in this time zone, that ain't lunch. So my fiance, who's now my husband, was there. And all I said was, can you please go get my fiance from the waiting room? I don't know what to do, because obviously I knew that it was going to be awful. And it was then, while we were waiting for Jeff to come up, was when she told me that they had to do a total hysterectomy. They took everything I had, lymph nodes. They just had to keep carving and carving and carving until the lab had no cells to identify.
So they went in before, so they went in there going in for a biopsy, and it turned into this whole long surgery.
Right. And back to the physician advocacy thing, I had shopped around in, like, while all this was getting planned, I shopped around for an oncologist that would be in the hospital just in case. And we settled on a man. And Jeff was very confident in him because he had great hair, which you can say is not a good criteria, and I'll tell you why. Because when they went in for just the biopsy and ended up doing the complete hysterectomy, he was nowhere to be found. He never, and we made the appointment for that day because he said he would be in the hospital that day. So a stranger that I never met ended up doing the hysterectomy, and the cancer debulking, they call it. And this is all, I'm unconscious. I don't know this is going on. And my gynecologist, who couldn't have made more mistakes, at the end of the surgery, when you have a regular hysterectomy just for female issues, they wash your abdomen with this solution to kind of seal everything, um, your peritoneal cavity. And you're not supposed to do that in a hysterectomy that has to do with cancer, because then it sends those cancer cells through your whole body because you're all bleeding and everything. And she did it even though she wasn't supposed to. And also, while they were doing the debulking, they slit my bladder, so I had to have an emergency
Casually.
bladder surgeon come in and sew me up there. And so now I have a lacerated bladder and the cancer cells being spread that shouldn't have been. And I'm just like laying there hearing all this and going,
It's not lunchtime.
first of all, it's not lunchtime. And second of all, this could not have gone more wrong. And I'm a positive person by nature. So I thought, well, they pretty much got all the mistakes out of the way. So going forward, all right. I think
It's only uphill from here.
we front loaded that. So it should be fine. And I changed gynecologists immediately. As soon as she took the staples and everything out, I never went back. I just never called her, never followed up on an appointment, never. She would send letters saying they've been trying to reach me, and I found a different person who worked on me through our local cancer institute, which is Roswell Park. Woo! World renowned, thank goodness.
Right. Yeah. Roswell does a really good job. They're a lot of people. My grandfather actually went to Roswell when he had skin cancer. So a lot of people definitely know and have a very successful outcome when they go there at the very least.
Right. And I have nothing but good things to say, even though they transfer me out, if we have to get to that. It was all for good reasons. And what is it, 2021, cancer free still, just had my last appointment.
Nice.
So we're all good.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So your bedside, and you just had this crazy surgery. What is the recovery like? Are you in a lot of pain? I mean, it's got to be a drastic change from, being someone active and being healthy and, trying to get yourself back to, I'm assuming a certain level of physical capabilities. And now you're just laying there in this hospital bed, and, maybe tell us like where your mind was at, and then also kind of what the recovery was like after, leaving the hospital.
Okay. So the time in the hospital was probably a week. And they were really encouraging me to get out of bed and walk. And I couldn't. I just physically couldn't. And that scared me because I was in so much pain. And I was so scared because, your abdomen, your core, your central area had just been, decimated. And I just couldn't think. I couldn't mentally picture my legs being on the floor, and getting myself out of bed. I still had the back pain because the disc it ended up being a herniated disc that was still bulging, and now worse because I've been lying around and manipulated in surgery and everything. So I just couldn't. And I kept asking when I could go home, but they said you can't go home until you can walk. And I'm okay. So catch 22.
Right.
So I had two very, very dear friends, Jen Riki and Asia Abdullah, and they were at the hospital every day. And my friend Asia came in as always, and I'm like, I need to walk today. And she just was, okay, let's do it. And she helped me out of bed, and it was ugly. And I'm trying to walk just the corridor, the hallway around the nurse's station. And there's an old woman in front of me with a walker, and she has got to be 85 years old. I mean, she's barely there.
Yeah.
And I can't keep up with her.
Oh. And
that I looked at my friend and I said, I just want to remind you that 3 weeks ago I did a triathlon. Just so we all have a frame of reference here. 3 weeks ago I was running, swimming, and biking.
Right. Well, it's just a testament of like how much surgery takes out of a person.
It was rough. And as I said, I have two children, two boys who are my whole life. And I had years prior had a bout of meningitis where I was in the hospital a week. And I had one son at that time. And I thought I could die right now and it would be okay. It was so painful. And so after I did that walk, I'm like, this is not that bad. This is not as bad as meningitis was.
Mm.
And I'm done here. I'm going home. So the doctor from hell came in to check on me. And I'm just like, I need to be home. And she gave me some marker about you can be home on Tuesday. I don't know what day it was. And I said, okay. And Tuesday came and she was going to postpone. And I'm like, you said I could go home on Tuesday. It is Tuesday. I am leaving. And that is it. And that whatever recovery I need to do, I will do from home. And I left. I just said I'm going, and I made sure I got home. And then that's where the real recovery started. I couldn't do stairs. I couldn't eat. They literally take your intestines out and lay them on a table, kind of like with a C-section. They do all their stuff, and then they just, as my doctor, the stoic who didn't want the hug that got one anyway, as he told me, they literally shove those puppies back in like Christmas lights that they're never using again. And they don't care how food's getting through. I could not eat. I could not go to the bathroom. I could not, nothing was working. And it was scary, but knowledge is power. So I don't recommend using the internet as your doctor, but there's nothing wrong with looking up, what can you expect when, and what can you do to ease the symptoms of.
Mm.
So you can, and I would call my primary frequently and ask him advice. So I took his advice. He said, from this point forward, you will literally be living between your appointments. He said, so just know when your next appointment for whatever is, and live your life as if nothing is wrong between those times, because you can't let this consume you.
Yeah.
And that was very good advice.
Yeah, I agree. And so you're home, you're recovered, you're starting a recovery process. Are you going through chemo after this point because you mentioned that they did something wrong when they did the peritoneal like clean or whatever. And was there any spreading of the cancer, or was it just localized, or what happened after?
So it was localized in that I was late stage 2. It had gotten both ovaries, both fallopian tubes, my uterus, and the lymph nodes surrounding. So they just took everything. And once they do all that surgery, you have to wait to do your chemo. And as a patient, you're like, I want chemo today. I don't want this growing back. I'm nervous. I'm scared. But your body has to recover, and you have to respect that time. Kind of like after you have a child, you have to respect your body's needs to recover. So you're worse off pushing it. So you have to wait. It was 6 weeks, a 6-week week, and I had appointments to start like talking about the chemo in that time span. I went to Roswell, met with the doctors, met with the team. The scariest part of that, because other than knowing that you have to wait what you feel like is so long, was when I sat down in the room with the original oncologist. He sat down with my fiance, Jeff, my now husband, Jeff, and I, and he said, these are your options for chemo. I'll let you look them over and you can pick a plan. And I was like, okay,
You guys are picking out insurance plans here.
I'm an economics teacher and he teaches English, which is even less scientific. I don't know if I'm qualified to pick my own plan for kicking ovarian cancer's butt. So I really think this is your job. And he looked at me, and the scariest thing, like I said, other than the weight, was him saying, if we knew what plan would fix you, we wouldn't be giving you a choice. But we don't have any idea more than you do. So we like the patients to pick what they're comfortable with, so that they have some personal ownership in that decision.
Wow.
And I'm like, what the heck is going to happen to me? So I looked at Jeff, and I looked back at the doctor, and this is just who I am. I'm like, which one's the hardest one? Which one is going to do the job and then some? And he's like, this one, which was a rotation, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, where 1 week they would do it just intravenously, and that was easy peasy. But then the next 2 weeks, you'd go in one day each week, and they would fill your abdomen through a port that they affix to your what's supposed to go under your fat layer. But I had lost, there's the other part, I had lost so much weight, I was down to like 94 pounds.
My
I
God.
had no fat, so it literally fused to my rib, and then the straw, or the catheter, if you will, drained into your abdomen where all your parts used to be. And they would literally gravity drip about a half a gallon of chemo into your abdomen straight. And then you had to lay perfectly flat for the whole administration of it, maybe 8 hours. And then they would roll you around. I'm like, what is this, medieval times? Like, this is what we have now? We're
Put you
like
on like
putting stuff in my
rotisserie.
tummy, and I'm like, why are we rolling? Oh, we got to coat your stomach. Like, what am I, like a chicken? Like, okay. So then they would roll me around, and I would be so bloated from all of this stuff being in there that I'd have to roll my seat back in the car so that I could drive home. And that was the rotation I picked. It was a combination of initially, um, it wasn't, was some tamoxifen or something like that, was the easy one, intravenously, and 1 week of abdomen. But the hard one was cisplatin. Um, and that one was awful. And that happened once a week. And then you'd have a week off for blood work. And then if everything was okay, then you'd do another 3 week cycle. So there was 18 rounds over 6 months. It took 6 months. Um, in there, the reason I love Roswell, and the reason why it's important to have a team of doctors that aren't afraid to say, we can't do this for you, find someone who can, was in addition to those regimens, my new OB, who is also a cancer researcher, she was very concerned about that wash that you just brought up again, that had gone through my whole system. And they had this experimental drug called Avastin that they had tested for brain cancer and lung cancer that prohibits cells from growing. Nothing can form a blood vessel when this Avastin is in your system, so no tumor could grow, theoretically. But they hadn't tested it on ovarian cancer, so Roswell wasn't authorized to administer it, and she was very adamant that I be taking that, because she didn't want any cancer cell to, like, take root, like in a breast or in my brain, and then start growing there. Because I also learned that after you have cancer, any cancer you get subsequently in a certain period of time is still that cancer. It's not like
Mm.
all of a sudden brain cancer, it's just ovarian cancer that landed somewhere else. So she wanted me to have it, but Roswell, because it's a cancer institute, couldn't administer it because of the testing. So she was affiliated with a local hospital called Sisters Hospital, Catholic health system, love them. And they could do it because they're a hospital and it's just a drug prescription to them. So they started incorporating that fourth drug, third drug, fourth thing, into my intravenous round. So I had the Avastin going from the fourth round of chemo through the end. So
So
that was rolled
what
in.
made you choose the harder route? Like, have you,
So
I mean, you get the three options, and like, was there a mild, medium, hot kind of thing where you just were like, you know what, I'm going to go full blast into the hard one?
it was, it was definitely, well, this one is this many times and this many times a week. And this one is, you have a little more time in between. And I just thought, if I do the hardest one, if I do the one that that is the hardest on my body, then that must mean it's the hardest on cancer too. And then if anything happens, God forbid, and it doesn't work out, I would never think I should have been harder. I should have
Mm.
picked the more stringent regimen. So I just thought, if I just pick the hardest one, the most, I shouldn't say the hardest, it was the most rigorous, it was the most, like, difficult to get through. It was just very difficult on your body. And I thought, well, if I can do that, and I always felt like, even though I was wasting away to nothing, and I was a cancer patient now, which I hate. I never felt weak. I mean, other than when I couldn't get out of bed right after the surgery, I was like, I'm a strong person. Like,
Mm,
I'm not like a weak person.
right.
So just bring it on. And that was basically my attitude. Like, just bring it.
And you were kind of always, you were even before you had cancer, you were kind of always like that, right?
Um, well, I've always been very optimistic. I'm not like an in your face, like strong person. I'm just like, you just, you just do life. Like everybody's got issues, everybody's got problems, everybody's got things that are thrown at them. And I'm always very empathetic to people that struggle with tackling things. And I
Mhm.
always want to help people tackle things. That's who I am. Um, and that's where I get my strength. Like, well, I'm just going to tackle it. Like, it's just, I'm going to tackle it today.
Y-
Like, this is what I tackled today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it'll be my son won't eat his peas, you know, maybe the dog, walk through his poop. I don't know. But today I'm tackling chemo.
I was going to
And
say, and that's probably made you a great person, also a great teacher and a mother, and obviously testament to you, to your how strong you were to go through the whole process. Do you feel like that was one of the biggest one of the major factors that got you through such a tough time, or was it just having a team of people to help you along the way, your friends and also family members, or do you think your mindset overall was kind of that rock that really, you're like like you said before, meningitis felt a lot worse than this, and this doesn't feel like that. Was that kind of that rock of like, wow, I did that before, I can do this now?
well, when you're laying in the hospital, there's nothing to do but think. I wouldn't let them turn the TV on. I was not interested in anything. People would come to visit it, and things like that. But when that wasn't going on, I literally just laid around and thought. And like I said, I have two small boys. My youngest was only two. He was 2 years old, and I didn't want to leave them. They had just gone through their parents getting divorced. Um, and I thought, I can't leave them. Like, that's unacceptable. I don't
Yeah.
know deal with what devil I have to make, but that is not acceptable. Of course, that's pie in the sky because nobody gets to pick. So after I reconciled the fact that I don't get to pick whether it works for me or not, I reflected on my life, and I was 43 at the time, which may be very old to some of your viewers and maybe very young to others, but that's right about middle. And I thought, I have been blessed with wonderful friends, wonderful families. As I said, I've been a teacher. I had been a teacher um, for about 13 years at that point. I never one day being a teacher thought it was work. It's literally like a cocktail party without the alcohol. I I mean, I love every one of the kids for the 13 years that I'd been there. And I just thought, if this is it, like, this life has been way better than so many other people's.
Mm,
And I can't be greedy, but I'm going to fight as hard as I can. And I
yeah.
think that's really where my mindset was um, at the time. I first decided, nope, not going. And then when the reality set in that, um, the recovery rate for that cancer is not awesome, I thought, okay, well, you know what? I'm not gone. So I'm going to live every day. And I'm going to be grateful that literally I had an awesome, awesome existence. So, you know,
Yeah,
that's what
I'm
was.
right. Yeah, and I think you've seen that before, and even hearing other people's stories of going through any kind of, whether it's cancer or any other diseases, it's just having that. I think mindset is, I mean, for everything, but mindset plays a huge role in your ability to move forward and progress. And in your story, it was just like, one, I've already had a great life, and if this is it, this is it. But at the same time, you have so much more to fight for, and so many little things that you need to just continue doing. And it obviously worked for you, and clearly brought you through to the point of where you are right now, which is amazing.
Right. That first doctor that I abandoned in pretty short order, when I went to get the staples out from the hysterectomy, she had given me no information. She had
Mm,
given me no information up to the biopsy. And um, she wasn't really forthcoming with information at the hospital other than we need you to be walking in order to leave. So when I sat down with her, so she could take the staples out, I said, I don't have any information. Like I said, I'm not a Google person that I was going to, I just need to know, am I going to see my son go to kindergarten? It was just one simple question. He was 2. And I said, am I going to see my son go to kindergarten? And she looked at me right in the eye, didn't give me any numbers or anything, and just said, I don't know. And that really was the eye opener to I've got to not be with this particular doctor, because I didn't need her to lie about my chances. I just needed to know what they were.
Yeah.
And hearing it from a healthcare professional that we don't know if you're going to be around in 2 or 3 years was really, it kicked me into gear. It really kicked me into gear. And I thought, well, I am going to do everything I can to be here for my son to go to kindergarten. And it was after that I had the appointment with the oncologist where he said, pick your plan. And I'm like, my father had, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say you're going to make that decision to fight.
Right. My father had passed away years prior from colon cancer. And I remember going to all of his doctor's appointments with him. And I remember one Roswell doctor saying, what you have to remember is that your body is very strong, and that your organs are has all these bridges, and the cancer is trying to get over the bridge, but your body is stronger. So you just have to, it's kind of like a battle. You just got to halt that growth, and you've got to halt those cells. And whatever we throw at the cancer, know that your body is stronger than the cancer. And that stuck with me as I was sitting with that oncologist. And I thought, you throw everything at this cancer, that literally won't kill me, and we'll be okay. My doctor, my primary, who I love, he told me that the chemotherapy, and this was a very good analogy, I thought, the chemotherapy is like when you're trying to kill weeds in your grass. He said, you use weed killer, and you're like, why isn't it killing the grass? Why is it only killing the weeds? The cancer sucks up the chemotherapy like weeds suck up the weed killer, and then the grass is just healthy enough to remain steady, just like your body will be. Yeah. So with all of that, ancillary information, that's why I thought I'll take the roughest treatment there is.
And it's almost a blessing. I mean, you had a bad run-in with maybe she just didn't, not that she didn't care about you, just didn't have a great way of communicating to you what was going on and how to effectively tell you, like, this is what's going on, and give it to you straight, how she probably should have. But nonetheless, it may have been even a blessing in disguise of how you realize that this isn't the doctor for me. And you learned a lot from, even though, a hardship can bring you a lesson. Sometimes it's a hard lesson, but she kind of gave, and thankfully you had that experience with your dad before to know, like, okay, maybe I need to look for somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now you are on this trial drug, right? And you're going through the recovery, and you said you're done with like the stomach wash and everything, and now you're on this trial drug, right?
No, the trial drug was simultaneous.
Oh, okay. So you're doing it at the same time.
Yeah. So it was a 4-week cycle. Week 1 would be the trial drug and the intravenous. I think it was tamoxifen, now that I'm thinking of it. And then the next week would be the abdominal tamoxifen, if I'm remembering the drug correctly. And then the 3rd week would be the abdominal cisplatin. And then the 4th week, you have no treatments, but you go for blood work, because they check all your numbers every cycle to make sure that you're eligible for the next round, because you can't have your numbers off, because then the chemo will kill you. So they check all your blood, make sure your red blood cells numbers okay, your white blood cells, your platelets, like 97 different things, barometers in your blood. And then if that all comes back fine, and you have no infection, then you're eligible to start the next one. So that all happened 6 times.
Gotcha. And so you get through this treatment, you get through the trial drugs. What's next? Is it just like doctor's visits with blood work?
Right. So once you're clear, and I was so afraid to ask questions because of the first doctor, that I just would do my appointments and, cross my fingers. I'm not really a religious person, but I would just cross my fingers and be like, well, I hope everything's going okay. But at the second last round, so I had like 6 more appointments of chemo. I asked at Sisters Hospital, they were wonderful. The oncologist nurse would come and visit me every time I was doing my treatments, and she'd ask how I was doing, if I needed anything. And one time when she came in, I said, can I just ask, like, how are my numbers? I knew how my blood numbers were because I'm not a micromanager, but I like to be informed of what's going on. And I would make them give me a copy of my blood work, and everything was always within range. But if I was at an end, like a low end or a higher end of normal, I would literally like, what do you have to eat to increase red blood cells? What nutrients help with this? And I would literally like blueberries this week, avocados that week. And I just was like that's where I started being on my diet. But at one point I asked her, I said, I know that my numbers are okay nutrient wise, like blood wise, but how are my cancer numbers? Are they going down? I didn't even know. They're very, I don't think they're trying to shelter people, but they're like, nobody is very forthcoming with information because they're so busy doing their job that I think communicating is just not a lot of their forte. So I asked outright, and she's like, your numbers are going down. And she must have seen that I was like, not that I wasn't buying it, but like I still was unclear. And she said, I just want you to know that Dr. Akers, my new doctor, she goes, she doesn't want to just like make you okay. She wants to cure you. It was the first time anybody had said that word to me. And I was 5 months in. Nobody had used the word cure. Nobody had used the words you're going to make it. Nobody had said you're on the right track. It literally was just all of these very uncomfortable, painful, nauseating, hair losing appointments, and not a lot of encouragement that things were going well. So to hear her say that and knowing that I was almost at the end was just a relief. Like, okay, she wants to cure me, so there must be hope. And when I selected that rigorous plan, I'm just recalling, the oncologist did tell me it's a 6-month plan, 18 rounds. If we can get you through 9 of them, we'll be happy. Nobody makes it to 18.
Wow.
He said, nobody gets 18 in, nobody does the six rounds. He said, so if we can get you to 3 rounds or 9 treatments, he said, we'll consider that a success. Okay. Like that was when I was picking it early on. And I'm like, okay. And Jeff and I got in the car and I'm buckling my seatbelt and I'm like, I'm not doing 9. I'm not doing 12. We're doing 18. Jeff is very conservative, as you know. And he's like, well, if he thinks 9 will do it, he goes, I don't want you to, kill yourself with the chemo. And I'm like, they pick 18 for a reason.
Yeah.
It must be because it kills more than 9.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah. So at the 5th round, I was like, I'm almost at the end and we're just going to keep going.
That's crazy that the entire time they're not, well, I'm sure there's some, I don't want to say, I thought the word confusion, but I'm sure there's not some certainty, and I'm sure it's confusing, but the fact that they didn't tell you that until 5 months later, that, hey, like, you're not even, like the treatment that you're going through, you're not even gonna have to experience the whole entire thing, or you may not have to, is kind of, bizarre to me that they didn't like brought you through the.
Oh no, before I started the treatment,
He told you that.
He told me that
Oh,
when
okay.
he opened his binder and he said, pick your plan. And Jeff and I were like, why aren't you picking my plan?
Right.
When we picked the plan we did, he said, just so you know, it says 18, but if we can get you through 9, that'll be fine.
Cool.
That would be, we'll consider that a success just because it's so hard on your body.
Gotcha. And then is that visit 5 months later when she said cure, was that the 9th visit?
No, that was the 15th visit.
Okay. So you were kind of,
that's what I mean. I was already almost done. Like I knew I only had 1 more month to go.
oh, okay.
But in my mind, I was thinking, I have 1 more month to go and I don't know if this worked.
Right.
So I asked, how am I doing? And that's when she said, Dr. Akers plans on curing you. and it was like music to my ears. I'm like, oh, great.
Right. This is awesome. So what happens then? And we're going from you get hear the first word, the first time you hear the word cure. Um, Obviously, it sounds like you're changing your diet quite a bit.
Mhm.
The recovery has probably been brutal to some degree. Are you back into exercise?
Yes. Oh, that's great. So after the hysterectomy, they don't let you do anything, which I probably did not listen, because I know that I was doing like planks and stuff with my friends. I was not going, I went to the gym after the hysterectomy, but once I started chemo, I did not go to the gym anymore because I was worried about infection. So, but I was working out, I was running on my treadmill. And once the hysterectomy healed and I started chemo, I thought, well, if I'm strong enough for chemo, then I'm probably strong enough to work out. So every time I would have, well, I worked out anyway, but I did a lot of yoga. And whenever I would have a chemo treatment, I would come home and run on the treadmill and
Mm,
work out. And I thought it was like my reward for having endured. Sometimes, like I said, it was an 8 hours of laying flat on my back, because you couldn't move while it was doing the peritoneal port thing. So I'm like, I'm moving, I'm running, I'm doing what I have to do. My ex-husband, he is a saint, not an awesome husband, but is a very perfect ex-husband. Still one of my very best friends. Anytime I had a treatment, he would take the kids so that I didn't have to worry who's picking them up from daycare, who's picking them up from school. He would keep them overnight that night in case I had any issues. My two girlfriends lived with me. They stayed at the house. So whenever I was home, the day after chemo was never bad, but day 2, 3, and 4 were a nightmare.
mm.
And they would, take the kids to Chuck E. Cheese or whatever so that I could get some extra sleep. And whenever I wasn't recovering from the administration of the chemo, I was working out. I was walking, I was running. I didn't do any weights. I was very concerned about, dexterity, but I would do a lot of yoga, a lot of body weight stuff. And I just thought I need to be healthy for when this is over. I refused to let the cancer define me. And I would never use the term athlete to describe myself, but I was active before. And so I insisted on continuing that.
And do you feel like that was like moving forward? That was kind of like your rock. Like I need to continue exercising and getting stronger.
I need to make sure I'm strong, and I need to let my kids see that these are just appointments. They never knew, other than when I couldn't get out of bed sometimes, they never knew when I had a treatment or when I didn't.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I mean, in the midst of all this, you still have to be a mother and
Yeah.
be there
There's
for
still
them
the
and bring them
tasks.
to school and everything.
So I was volunteering in my son's cafeteria and bald, and I refused to wear a wig. I would not. And I remember when they told me I was going to lose my hair, 95% lose their hair. Of course, I'm going to be the 5% that didn't, but that didn't happen. And so I had read that it helps to cut your hair short and then shave it yourself so it's not like clumps coming out. And I kept thinking, I'm not losing it, but I'd brush my hair and there'd be more in the sink then. And I'd
Mm.
be like, so I took the kids with me to get my hair cut. And then I took the kids with me to get it like, Halle Berry 007 short haircut, little pixie thing. By the time I went in to get it shaved, they literally went into Supercuts with me and they're like, can we go next door to Dollar General? This is the third time we've been here in 2 weeks. We know you're losing it. Can we just go? And I'm like, yeah, go. So my friends would take them, and then I just wore a hat or nothing. I just was like, I'm not wearing a wig because that's creepy. To me, it was creepy. Like to look, I knew I didn't have hair, but then sometimes I'd walk by a mirror and I did. And I did not want my kids to be, I tried to use it as a learning experience to them. Like, you don't know what other people are going through. And I'm not putting a wig on to pretend that we're not going through this. We're
Mm.
dealing with it head on.
Yeah.
And this is who mommy is. And if you're embarrassed of mommy, then that's going to be your problem. But they never were.
Mm.
They just were very good about it.
That's awesome. Well, I was gonna say, after you had gotten, was it kind of like real for you after that, the hair loss? Was that a point where you're like, wow, like this is actually happening, or was it kind of already like instilled in your brain that it was like a moment of like, this is something that is like a part of me now? Because I
Um,
feel like for me, like in losing your hair, it's like so. I mean, it's just like that stereotypical, cancer patient idea, right? And I feel
yeah,
like for me, it would have been like, oh my god, like this is happening. Did you have that moment or not really?
I didn't really, it was weird. I didn't really care about the hair. What I cared about was the eyelashes because
The
it's
eyelashes.
so weird, but I could put a hat on and you like, and I wore a hat frequently just because it was winter when this was going on. And I would wear a hat to bed. I was freezing all the time. So, and like I said, I was down to like 94 pounds and my normal weight is like 115. So it's
Mm,
like I'd lost 20 pounds. And, um, so cold a lot. So the hair loss didn't bother me because I think I had the hat on all the time. Hats, different people were bringing me hats constantly. It was the eyebrows didn't even bother me because I could draw those on. It was the eyelashes, and it wasn't the aesthetics of the eyelash. It's like that your eyelashes protect things from going into your eye.
really? Oh,
Like
okay.
I had no protection. Like your eyelashes stop dust from going in there, and it's like I just got nothing. And it never really came back. My hair came back and my eyebrows came back for the most part. But this, we're going on 8 years now, and 7 years, 8 years. And that my eyebrows or my eyelashes are nowhere near what they used to be. And they,
Hmm.
the Italian, my ex-husband used to go all the time. And yeah, they just never came back.
Interesting. And
But it was lovely, ladies, not to shave 6 months, nothing, nothing.
nothing.
You're like, shower, and I felt like this is what men go through. It was fantastic. Like,
No
what?
shampoo, nothing.
Yeah, it was really great. That
So
was
maybe you can
great.
really embrace the bald look.
Yes, yeah, I would totally go bald again.
Do you feel like the exercise and the diet help your hair grow back?
No.
You don't think so? No.
Mm.
Okay.
It
Well, I
started
mean,
coming back as soon as the chemo stopped. About a
okay.
month after the chemo stopped, I'd get little, you could feel it, you could see the shadow, and then you never know what it's going to come. Well, they say it comes back regular, but I had perfectly straight hair before and it came back curly and it never went back. So it's
Hmm.
just like this now. But, again, bright side, like I used to spend hours straightening my straight hair. Um, Now I don't do anything. It's like, it is what it is.
Whatever.
I've looked worse than this, so this is actually good. So yeah, no, I didn't think the diet helped that, but I will say when it started coming back, I was already back at school teaching again. So happy to get back at school. The kids were
Mm.
just so gracious. They were just wonderful, and we teach on smart boards, which are like this backlit board. And when I would go up and write on it, you could see my shadow and you could see the hair. And it was just like, so I would sit there and I'm like, oh, and I'd start like drawing flowers, like it looked like grass. So I'd start like drawing. I'm like, look, guys. And they're like, could you just teach us?
Teach us math, please.
Yeah,
That'd
just
be great.
show us a graph, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So when did you officially when were you done with the chemo, and then what was like the next part? Like, what did you just continue getting blood work after that, or and then did they space out the appointments?
Yeah. So you get a PET scan prior to chemo starting so they can see where it all is. And I lit up like a Christmas tree, is what they told me after the first PET scan, that's what told my doctor she needs to have this experimental drug because it's going to plant somewhere. The intravenous chemo was supposed to go everywhere. And that's why your hair falls out because it kills the follicles. So now they have like these cold caps that you can wear during chemo. So the chemo doesn't go up there
Hmm.
and then the blood doesn't go up there. And you don't lose as much hair. They didn't have that then, whatever. But so you get that initial PET scan. So when you're done with everything, you've finished however many appointments you're having. They wait a couple of weeks and then they send you for blood work and then they send you for a second PET scan so they can compare it to the first. And they're hoping, obviously, that nothing lights up, and nothing did. And the CA 125 that had been in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds was down to a 5, which
Mm.
was nice and low. I have not been down to 5 again, and every 3 months I get blood work done still all these years later. And like this month it was 15, and I always panic, but it's still a low number. It's just not as low as I've been.
Mhm.
So you panic, but you have to remember that anything under 35 is fine. You're just hypersensitive to these numbers. So you still continue to get blood work done. I go to my gynecologist, the same as she's my oncologist and gynecologist. And she does an exam every 3 to 4 months,
Mhm.
gives me my blood work slip. And we've just been monitoring that way. They sent me for a follow-up PET scan in March of this year. I did not want to go for a 5-year one because I felt like I was fine, and I just didn't want the radiation. But years went by, and she said we really should just take a look. You don't want something to be going on. Obviously, you felt fine before. Just it's up to you, obviously, but I would prefer to have some imaging done just so we have it. And so I acquiesced and got one done in March, and it was fine.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure it was scary just because you're like,
yeah,
well, what?
it,
Well, not again.
right. It is scary. And the prep work for a PET scan is not fun. You can only eat green vegetables and eggs for 2 days. That's it. And you cannot move. You cannot move for 2 days. You can't go for a walk. You can't pet the dog. You can't, because they don't want your muscles using any sugar or creating any energy. You
Interesting.
literally drive yourself. They sit you in a chair. They inject you with a radioactive sugar, and then the cancer eats up the sugar, and that's what lights up in the PET scan. So if you've tied your shoe or itched your head, that's going to light up on the PET scan. They're so sensitive that while I was laying there, I had to swallow so bad. So they're like, don't move. And I'm like, okay. And I could feel the phlegm like gathering in my throat. And I'm laying there and I'm like, don't swallow, don't swallow. So it's like dripping, but you can't control that. And so when she read it, she's like, no, nothing happened. She goes, but they said there's something physiological going on in your throat. I'm like, I had to swallow so bad. And I'm sure it was me holding back the swallow.
I'm sure.
That's probably what it was. So, you
So you've
know,
been, and it's been how long now since you've been completely?
I was diagnosed in September 11th, 2013. And so now we're in 2021. So a little over 7 years.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. And glad that is clearly behind you now and moved on to bigger and better things. So you had said you had a herniated disc, and I know, you've been exercising all along. Kind of did the back pain come back, and did it stick around as you're exercising, or what happened with that?
So as I said, they said your back pain's the least of your worries now. We're all hands on deck for the cancer. So when the cancer treatment was done, I went to see after the cancer surgery. She didn't sew me up properly. Just another kudos to that doctor. So I had a herniation in abdominally. So that had to get fixed when the chemo was done. Then I had to recover from that. And then they said, okay, now we'll address your back. So they sent me finally for that MRI, and it ended up being a herniated disc, bad. And I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't walk. So finally I had to go see a spinal surgeon. He was going to do a discectomy, and that was going to fix everything. And I would say that was probably a year and a half after all of this had begun.
Mm.
So from the cancer diagnosis, now we're like a year and a half after that. And I planned the surgery, and I was sitting down. I don't know, I was reading a magazine or something. The surgery was set for the following Tuesday, and a panic just came over me. I'm like, I do not want more anesthesia. I do not want to be incapacitated again. I don't know what to do, but every fiber of my being said, do not have the surgery.
Mm.
And I was adamant to get the surgery because I wasn't able to run. I was like regressing. Like I had been doing all that exercise during chemo, and I had been trying to, continue on with my activity, but it just kept making the disc worse and worse. So I went over to our local gym where I was a member, and I met with the resident trainer, Nick, and he said, "Give me a month, and if I can't make it better, then you'll at least know that you tried."
Yeah.
Okay,
And for reference, Nick is he's a trainer, but he's also a physical therapist.
correct.
Yeah.
And I had gone to physical therapy briefly, um, but it didn't work. That particular physical therapy just didn't work for some reason. So then I decided the surgery would be the best option. And then I got scared of the surgery, went to see Nick, the trainer slash physical therapist. And it helped. I was able to get out of the car. He assured me that someday I would be able to run again. He assured me that he could help, and he did help. And it was hard work. And it was not just, people think I'm going to go to a physical therapist or a trainer, and they're going to fix me. But the fixing is you doing it. They're just giving you the tools, like a teacher. Like,
Yeah.
I show my kids a supply and demand graph, but they have to know it. So he would show me the exercises, and then it's my responsibility not only to do it with him, but do my homework. Like 3 times a day, you have to do this. Twice a day, you have to do that. And there are no excuses, because you're not going to fix it unless you do this homework. So I put on my student cap, and I did everything he said, and he fixed it. And I have been, it's not that I never hurt my back again, but when I do, I'm really confident that I can fix it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think one of the biggest things that I think physical therapists forget is how important, well, even physicians, because we talked about how setting expectation wise, even from your oncologist, the expectations kind of maybe not, they weren't set like they should have been, like from the get-go. And even physical therapists, I think, sometimes forget that most important step is that we're teachers, and we need to be able to teach and guide you through a rehab plan regardless, and kind of
right.
go over pitfalls as they come and go, and ultimately, yeah, you do have to do the work, but also I think there's a role and responsibility from physical therapists to say we need to understand that we need to teach people how to move more, and how it's going to be a process, but if you do the work, you're going to get to where you want to be.
Right. And I know I have friends who, and my parents, poo poo the physical therapy. And I think sometimes it's because the first time you meet with a physical therapist, they give you these tiny little movements to do. And you're like, what the freak is this? Like, what the
Mm-hmm.
heck? That's not going to do anything. But you can't rehabilitate until you incrementally improve what's wrong. You
Yeah.
can't just go right in full bore. And I think sometimes people it's the culture. Everybody just wants everything right now, but your body does not heal that way or respond that way to nutrition or to physical remedies or whatever. And you really just have to respect the stages your body has to go through to recover.
Yeah.
And
I always
um,
relate it to like weight loss. I feel like if people are always weighing themselves every day, you're going to, and you look, you're going to get mad at yourself, because if you weigh yourself every day and you're looking at that number and you're staring at the number and you're like, I have this goal to meet this number, and you're not achieving it, you're going to get mad. But if you weigh yourself maybe like once a week versus every day, you may notice, okay, I was better than I was last week. Let's continue on this path. And I think if you do it day by day, it's a terrible representation of the direction that you're going, but rather having a week by week outlook on your progress, for whether it be back pain, or even if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to increase your strength. I think your body, like you said, it takes a while for your body to adapt and overcome. It took us a million years to, become humans essentially and evolve. And to this day, it still takes time for our bodies to adapt and evolve. And that, I think, super important to kind of highlight how sometimes it does take time for your body to recover.
right. And it's frustrating. People are like, I don't know. It's everything's a balance, right? So people are afraid to move. So sometimes when they're injured or they think they're injured, they stop moving. And then that just makes everything worse,
Yeah.
because what I've learned through all of my physical therapist friends now, thank you, Michael,
Mm.
is that literally your whole body is connected. And I do a lot of yoga, And it's the same concept. Like literally every part of your body is connected. So if you have, like I do, a herniated disc, which FYI is not herniated anymore. I do have like bad discs because of the chemo, but that herniation is not there. Um, you need to build up what's around it. You need to, just like in a relationship, like a personal relationship or with your kids or whatever, you need to build up what's around it. If there's a weak spot, my husband can't unload the dishwasher to save his soul. So we work around that. So when there's ever a weak link, you have to figure out where are the supporting mechanisms, what abdominal muscles need to be extra strong to hold that in place, or back muscles or psoas or whatever. So I know everybody doesn't have the time or the desire to be their own doctor and to know all these things, but like your body is you have it your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So you really should, people really should take the time to learn things for themselves, like to gain knowledge. Like it's the most important thing to be knowledgeable about.
Yeah, and invest in your own body. I mean, even
That's,
I
oh
think
yeah,
people complain about eating healthier foods and how they're sometimes more expensive. But it's like, okay, well, if it makes you live or feel better over the next couple of years, or maybe next several years, wouldn't you be willing to invest in that right now rather than, when you get to 50, 60, 70 and be like, man, I should have did that 20 or 30 years ago, you know?
right,
And the
right.
other thing too, you bring up was you talk about pain, right? Especially when we're in acute pain. I mean, I've had low back pain myself before in the past. And when you have pain, the only thing that's going through your mind is like, I want to get rid of this yesterday because this sucks, and one thing I've been trying to educate patients on, or even other people, is experiencing pain is actually a good thing, right? It's almost a blessing that your ability to feel pain and respond is good, and it's natural, and it's completely okay for your body to feel pain. It's just
Absolutely.
obviously the amount is something that we need to work on, and but it's an indicator essentially that because you have pain, it means you're having a natural, healthy response to something, and it means you're in tune with your body essentially.
Exactly. When you have pain, not like nobody embraces pain, right? Nobody loves it. Ooh, but it speaks to you because that is your body's only, one of your body's only ways to tell you
Hmm.
ease up or assist me, right? So you have to listen. And back pain, toothaches, like these are, like you said, acute things that speak. Like these things,
Chirp,
they're
yeah, they're yelling.
and it takes care. It takes, you need to address, but you also need to be a part of the long-term solution. I know that the disc herniation is gone because I just happened to have my physical with my doctor. And he said that one of the reasons why the the disc healed so well is because of, like, I'm not overweight. Like I'm postmenopausal now, yay, since 43. And women out there know it is very difficult for women to keep weight off after
Mhm.
menopause.
Yeah.
Your body is just like, and it is not. It's not fun for many women to try to stay uh, the, the same size all their life, right? Because your hormones are gone, and now the weight just comes on. So through diet, which is the other part of the equation, through diet I've been able to maintain my 115-pound normal. And because I did or do, I don't have all that weight on those vertebrae. So that's a good thing. And it takes extra work.
Yeah.
My husband's eating his omelet this morning, and there's my oatmeal with my blueberries.
Hmm.
And it's just a conscious choice. Mine just happens to fold in with, I try to eat healthy, to stay healthy, to keep the cancer at bay, to you know maintain my weight. So it all works together. Your
Yeah.
level of activity, your level of mindfulness, and your level of nutrition. And to some people it's worth it, and to some people it's not. I can't imagine living any other way now. I mean, I know I'm 51, but I don't feel any older than I felt at 25, to be perfectly honest with you. I've
Yeah,
been
even after going through everything that you've gone through. And I think that's definitely a common trend too. People who stay fit and, maintain a certain level of exercise. It's like, I'm 50 or I'm 60 and, I trained somebody who's in their 60s, multiple people, and they're like, I don't feel any different than I went when I was 25. I have to modify things a little bit, but, they still feel the same. And even nowadays, it's even more important. I mean, with the pandemic and everything, being more susceptible to more harm if you were to get the virus, being overweight, it's almost another reason to be like, hey, like I really need to stay on top of this, because not only is it like bad to get diabetes and be carrying all that extra weight around with you, but it's also important just as a risk factor for other diseases and so forth.
right. Um, and yeah, and it's a lifestyle choice. It isn't, these aren't diets. It isn't, when you talk about getting on the scale, like I don't even know if we have a scale in the house. I mean, obviously we have a scale in the house. I mean, I shouldn't say that, that's not authentic, but like the scale is not something we would get on every day to check our weight, because it's just, you can kind of tell. For people who are overweight that are trying to lose weight, if you follow certain lifestyle choices, the weight will just come off. And the bonus will be, not only you'll feel better because you wanted to lose weight, but also because you'll feel better because you'll be healthier. And I don't like when people pick a number, like I have to be 120 or I have to be 125 or 140. Your body knows what weight it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And um, you can be fit and not be small, and you can be fit and not weigh 110 or something like that. You don't have to be a size 2.
Right. And I also want to ask you, because I feel like something that I get even when mostly when I was a trainer, but also, as a physical therapist, I see, one of the things they complain about if they are talking about weight is motivation. Right. And, I can hear in the back of my mind, like, well, for instance, you went through cancer and you were already like fit before. And, I don't know how I could lose the weight, I'm not as lucky as, she was. I'm not as strong as like you are. What keeps you motivated now? I mean, obviously you went through cancer and everything, and you were fit before, and it was easier to get back on the horse after the fact. But I can see how people may use that as an excuse, right? Like, she was already strong and she was already fit before, and there's no, I'm not her, so I'm not going to do it. And so, like, what would you say to somebody that maybe, although maybe they're trying to lose weight or something like that?
Um,
Are there other things that keep you motivated externally from just, I mean, it can't just be, I mean, you also mentioned that it's just a part of your life. And I feel like that's something that you can really hone in on, where like, regardless of how today turns out, I'm going to work out today, or I'm going to stick to my diet.
um, okay. Shortest answer is nothing can externally motivate you. Psychology teacher coming out. Um, you can be externally motivated for a short term gain, but that short term external reward, by definition, is temporary. So you might want to fit into a certain dress for a wedding, or you might want to, your boyfriend's coming back from military leave, or there might be some kind of event that you're like, oh, I'm going to do this for that. But unless there's a reason, and it doesn't matter what your reason is, it could be, I want to not get cancer again, or I want to be able to beat my husband at running a mile, or which I love doing, or I want to be a good role model for my kids and I would like them to be active. um, Whatever your reason, if it's not inside, if it's not intrinsic, it is, it's going to be really hard to always have that constant benchmark for yourself, because you're not always going to have a wedding, or your boyfriend's not always going to be coming home from leave, or whatever. So until you can get to a place where it is all for you, I don't want to be a naysayer because I am a positive person. It's just not going to happen. Now,
Mhm.
I will say that you might have an external motivator, like I want to fit into that dress for the wedding. And once you see what's happening, you are like, I'm going to keep that going because now I like what I see.
Mhm.
That might be a springboard. But if that doesn't click, it's just not going to click. And I'm all about live and let live. Many of my friends, dear, dear friends, are not active at all. And my life would be so much easier if they were, because I would have people to do things with that I do. Um, but people are just who they are. If you have never found value in eating well and being fit, you're probably not going to find value in it. And if the science of you will live longer and be more alert and healthy doesn't convince you that that lifestyle is worth it, then it's not worth it.
Mm.
I'm probably not the answer you wanted to hear on your
Well,
thing.
no, no. I mean, it's an important point because I think people do get in this endless loop of looking for external factors to motivate themselves, right? Like you said,
Right.
and I feel like people look to, like you said, the wrong areas to try and motivate themselves, or just to get started. And perhaps there's actions. I don't know if you perhaps there was something that you did early on with, or even like a mentality that you had instilled when you were like fighting cancer, or even like those early steps of when you were talking about that I need to get moving. What were those? How did you get started making it intrinsic to you that when you were recovering from the surgery and everything, that you like you needed to do this? Like, how did that? Because obviously I can't imagine what it felt like after the surgery and coming out and it not being lunchtime. It had to feel like the world was, the bed sheet was kind of taken out from under you. Was it, were you already in the mindset where you're like, okay, I'm gonna be fit, I need to get over this? And or was there like a moment of little things that you started to do incrementally, where like you started walking, or perhaps you can enlighten me of like, maybe there was there small little steps that you needed to take, or was it just like it was a switch, like it was a switch that it was like something intuitively is telling me like I need to do this?
Well, I don't like to being told what I can't do.
Mm,
That's been a thing my whole life. I have a lot of brothers, and I don't like to be told what I cannot do. So when and I don't like to be told what to do either. So I can identify with people who don't want to hear, you really need to work out more, you really need to eat better, because that is not helping anybody.
yeah.
Like I said, people are people and everything's intrinsic. So when my doctor told me you have to get up and walk, I'm like, I don't have to get up and do anything. I can continue right now.
I will
I
lay here for as long as I
on that
like.
floor because you just cut my whole body out of me and I can't even, it's like I'm in so much pain. Once I did that and grandma was passing me in the hall, that was not a fun visual for me.
Hmm.
Um, and my girlfriend, Asia, who, like I said, a rock. Um, and I said, I was in a triathlon 3 weeks ago. And she's like, that was 3 weeks ago. Like, it took us 4 days to get you out of bed. So don't be
Yeah.
bringing up your triathlon days. That did not feel good.
Mm.
And then when they told me I could not work out because you cannot do things after that kind of surgery. And like I said, I probably did things before I should. So when they told me you cannot do this, you cannot do that, it made me remember and value, like, that was stuff I like to do, like that. And because just prior to these diagnoses, like for the couple of years prior, I was doing those triathlons. Like that was my, like I said, my catharsis from the divorce. Um, and I thought, I missed that.
Yeah.
The very first thing I trained for, and I'm laughing now because like, why would you have to train for this? But the very first thing I trained for after the divorce was, we have this thing called the turkey trot in Buffalo, which is a 3 mile, I think, run.
Hmm.
And I thought it was a 3K, which is less than 3 miles. And then I found out it was a 5K. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. And now looking back, I'm like, this was like such a short amount of running anyway. But that was like the very first thing I did to like focus on something other than the kids not being home sometimes. And so then obviously triathlons came and then the cancer came and whatever. But I missed like that. I loved it.
Hmm.
And I loved having goals, and I loved knowing if I did better or worse, and I loved being healthy. And you know what? I also loved not caring if I wanted a piece of pie. Like I could have a piece of pie. Not that I would eat pie every day because I know it's not good for me. And I wouldn't eat pie now because now I'm freakier. But if I want, like, I never said to myself, I can't have that nacho, or as I was really working out a lot, like for the training,
Mm.
and I ate healthy most of the time. So I liked that feeling. I liked knowing like that I could go into my closet and friends of mine would be like, oh, I had to like switching out their summer and winter clothes because in Buffalo you do that. Um, like when winter would come around again, my friends like go through and see what fits. And I'm like, I don't ever say anything, but like I never have to go through and see what fits because
Mm.
I've been the same size since I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
So these are things I don't have to worry about. Now it's a trade-off, right? Because it takes a lot of time to be fit, and it takes a lot of energy and thought to go into what you're eating and what you're doing, and rotating your workouts and things like that. So I guess it's all a wash because they don't do that, but they spend some time figuring out if their clothes fit and buying different ones. But I don't worry about those things. Like those things never cross my mind. I don't have fat jeans and skinny jeans. I just have my jeans.
Yeah. And I
So
think a takeaway would be that because you've established an exercise and you've been exercising for so long, it makes it easier to pick things up even after everything you've gone through. It made it so much easier for you to pick it back up again because you've been doing it for so long. And
yeah,
that,
I think muscle memory is definitely a thing. Like your
mhm.
body definitely responds. It did not take me long. This is how I knew, and this is why I say you have your weight and your weight is your weight. And women and men should embrace what their healthy weight is. Your body knows what it should weigh.
Yeah.
And if you eat healthy and exercise, your body will just become the weight it's supposed to be. It may not be the 110 pounds you want, but it'll be the weight you're supposed to be. And this is how I know that. Down to 94 pounds during chemo after the surgery. And admittedly, I could not eat. I literally, my father would bring me a bagel sandwich from Tim Hortons, woo, Buffalo again, Tim Hortons, and a black coffee. And it would take me all day to eat that bagel and drink that cup of coffee for
Yeah.
weeks. That's all I would ingest. And it's all I could keep down. And, but when that was over and the chemos were over and I went back to work and I just started eating normal and doing my workouts, it was not even 3 weeks until I was back at 115,
Mm.
118. And that's just what my weight is supposed to be.
Yeah.
It just is.
Well, because you
Um,
put the work in beforehand and you had every opportunity to stop. You had every opportunity to quit. And you can say, hey, you know what? I had this chemo. Maybe I should take it easy from now on. Maybe I shouldn't be working my body this hard. Or, um, maybe I have this short life to live. I'm going to eat and do whatever I want to do. But you did the opposite where you're like, you know what? I have to continue living and I have to continue. I have so many reasons to continue on. And you looked at it as if as if your life literally depended on it. You needed to continue doing all those things where it's eating right, exercising and working and doing all the things that made you independent.
right. And as you get older, your body craves that movement. It craves that attention because things naturally atrophy. I mean, things in your house, your pets, your kids. So everything atrophies. So your body craves um, that attention to movement and nutrition so that you can stave off the illnesses that most of us can expect as we grow older.
Mm.
Osteoporosis, which is I have now because of the chemo, but not because of anything I did. Um, so diabetes, like you brought up before, your normal age-related illnesses can be staved off or eliminated with just some activity. Some even you don't have to like be a bodybuilder. You don't have to do triathlons. You just go for a walk, go for a hike, go for a walk, you know, do body weight exercises, yoga. I can't tell you how therapeutic and beneficial yoga has been for me. So
You said you want to become an instructor, right?
I do. I really do. So, and not for me. And my husband's like, why are we spending $3,000 on getting yoga certification if you're not going to teach it? And like, it's going to help me with my practice. I mean, because if you can teach something, that means you know it. That means
Mm,
it's ingrained. And it's no different in a high school classroom or in a yoga studio. And if I can become a teacher of it, that means I've really, um, you know, digested that practice.
yeah.
And that's super important to me. So I think sometimes people hear fitness and they think weights, kettlebells, bands, running miles and miles and miles. All of that's fine and good and in moderation healthy. But you can get started literally just by strapping on a pair of sneakers and going for a walk.
Absolutely.
I
And
mean,
super simple. Just even get, and I try to instill this with most of my older adult patients, where it's just like, listen, your knee hurts or your hip hurts, and obviously this is all situational. However, your back hurts, but go for a walk. Start at 10 minutes. Start at a half
yes.
hour. Just get moving. And get that snowball, or that get the ball moving, because it's a lot easier to push a rolling car than one that's still, and I think it's like you said, just continuous motion towards something and taking baby steps.
And the things, and not everybody wants to or can pay a trainer.
Mm,
But I mean, like, okay, I was always active, but until I met Nick, and then through Nick met you, that functional training is invaluable because you learn things that will help you. I mean, it's functional. It's like everyday activities get easier when you know how to do these moves, picking up things without straining your back, mobility things, reflex things, agility things. And as a regular person, you wouldn't know how to fine tune that for yourself. And you don't have to see a trainer 3 times a week. You could see a trainer once a week, and then carry those activities home with you, or ask, hey, what can I do at home that's similar or an equivalent? I know when I was working with you, Mike, I was not very satisfied with the girth of my thighs. I have
yeah.
this freak thing, and it's always been, so it wasn't Mike's fault, but I gain muscle super fast and super fast. And like after several months of training with Mike, like my shirts were getting tight around, the shoulders and the biceps, and my jeans, I'm like, I don't, my jeans were tight around my thighs. And I'm like, I just gain muscle super fast. But your good trainer will hear you, and they'll assume you're loving everything unless you say something. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, Mike, I got to scale back on that thigh work.
Yeah.
That you can still get the benefits without doing as much weight or doing it as frequently, or this trainer will sub things in so that you're still getting the functional benefits, and the body response that you want.
Yeah, for point of reference for everybody listening, it was probably 2 to 3 months that we were working, like initially before me and Terry had this conversation about, okay, maybe we need to change a different direction. And after learning about who she was and everything she's gone through, and think putting on too much muscle was in the back of my mind, and she put on muscle very quickly, which was awesome. But again, we needed to switch gears, and
Right.
obviously there was a lesson for me, but also a lesson for other people, that communication is super important between a trainer and a client. And maybe, do you feel like having a trainer was like elevated your ability to continue staying fit and uh, maintaining a level of exercise? And do you think that, would you recommend anybody getting a trainer, even if you said like even once a week, but even if it's like once every 2 weeks or once a month, to have someone to keep you accountable, I feel like can be very powerful.
Accountability is great because I always looked at my, my training sessions as appointments, right? You don't want to miss a doctor's appointment. I didn't want my back to start hurting. So I was definitely going to always keep my training appointments, with the notion in the back of my head that this is staving off that disc issue. So it was easy for me. But even if you do meet with your trainer less frequently, like you said, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, it not only has that accountability, but you can have a check-in to make sure that you're doing things properly, because your trainer might meet with you for 45 minutes. Let's say it's every other week, and you go home and you're like, oh, I'm going to do that on Wednesdays and Fridays by myself. Awesome. But you, even if you can watch yourself in the mirror, you can't watch yourself and have the form you're supposed to have all the time. So it's really important, because so many times I think, "Oh, I'm rocking this plank," and Mike's like, you got to put your butt down. You got to put your butt down, or whatever. And you're like, I thought it was down. Like, I can't see where I am.
Mhm.
So then you develop this mind body connection, not to get all freaky on everybody,
No.
but you develop this mind body connection where, like, when he tells me to, now I know how that feels. Like he said, lower it, lower it. Okay, that's right. And then you remember, oh, that's where it's supposed to be. But that isn't going to happen overnight or with one session. So you
Mhm.
you should have these check-ins, not only for the motivation to keep moving with it, but also so that you are not doing more harm than good by having improper form. And not that you're necessarily going to hurt yourself, but you just might not see the results that you were hoping to.
Right. And it might be a thing to do early on if you're having a hard time getting the ball rolling, is having a trainer to keep you accountable, or even a friend. It doesn't even have to be a trainer and you have to pay somebody, but just somebody else to keep you accountable to your goals and to continue moving forward and keep you in check, essentially. Maybe super, especially since obviously it was the new year and 2020 was obviously crazy. I don't know if they're going to have as many 20 like January, like New Year's people joining gyms and stuff. But for those of you who may be trying to, it may be, helpful to get a trainer, or even again, have accountable buddy, essentially.
And I haven't been able to find one, but I know that, Buffalo is not the biggest market. California might be better, but, and I know they have like the, Lululemon mirror and all that stuff. But if you can find somebody who's willing to do online training, even if you're with a buddy at home, or you have multiple people that are tapping into that trainer, so that they can see you, and they can, even though they can't be there with you physically, they can, give you pointers for your own self. I do a lot of, shout out Heather Robertson, love her, and yoga with Adrienne. These are my COVID buddies. They're my best friends now. I love them. I'm sure they love me as much if they knew I was there. But they can't see me. But I'm old and I've been doing these things a long time, so I'm confident that I'm doing what they expect, and the way they expect it. But if I was just starting out, um, I would appreciate more if I could find somebody that had like a subscription, that was a physical therapist or a personal trainer, that would meet with me for a half an hour, even online, and just be like, okay, show me how your plank looks. All right, now do a wall sit. No, you don't put your hands on your legs, you put your hands down, and all that good stuff, because they can still give you corrections, even though you're not physically present. So I don't know if they have that in California or not.
They
I'm
may
not sure.
have some, I think. There's a couple home gym stuff. Forget the names, but I'm sure there's people who are working very, like you said, the mirror with
Oh, no.
Peloton and everything. Yeah, everyone's, I think, heading in the direction of working out at home and try and find the external motivator. And it doesn't always have to be an equipment. It can always, like you said, even if it's a Facebook group of people your age trying to get to a certain goal, finding something that will, push you over the 1 month. I always describe it as like certain sections. Like when you first work out, if you can get through the first month, it's easier sailing. And then all of a sudden you hit 3 months and it's like, oh, wow, I'm seeing results. I can kind of slack off. And then, I feel like a lot of people maybe drop off at that point. And then let's just say you continue. And then you reach another 6 months and you're like half a year in and things are going great. And it's another point where you can be like, I can just drop off. And then I think after about a year, if you can do a full exercise, not even a full exercise program, but staying consistent, working out 3 to 4 times a week for a year, it's going to make it so much easier over the long term. And it's almost going to be a new habit that you just incorporate into the rest of your life.
Right. I know my husband used to take his rest day, right? He used to pick a rest day every week. And then after we got married, I don't take a rest day. I don't know, like, what's that? Um, I'm like, why do you take a rest day? Well, you need to give your body a rest. Well, if you're working out properly and doing the proper rotations, then your body is resting where it's supposed to be resting. Like, you're not going full bore every day, upper, full bore, lower every day. So those are your rests. And so now on his rest day, he does yoga. And
Mm.
I think if he missed a day of something, he would really feel it. He would think, what, I was a lazy bum today, or, oh, I feel like something's missing. And as you get older, the less you move, the more aches and pains you get. So you
Yeah.
take a rest day or two and you think you're resting your body, but you're not. I mean, we're not out there like, we're not bodybuilding. You don't need a rest day. Just like you probably don't need like a recovery drink,
Hmm.
it's
Right.
just, you're just moving, you're just being active. And yeah, if you can put in a solid year and really buy in, then it's something that you'll just keep doing. And again, that comes from that intrinsic satisfaction versus, oh, I made it to a year, now I'm going to take 3 months off or
Right.
whatever.
And it's also funny that like it's almost counterintuitive that when people are getting older, like, oh, I gotta ease up. I hear this all the time. Like, I'm getting older now. I gotta take it easy. And it's like, no, you gotta start. This is you gotta keep exercising. You gotta keep going. You gotta keep doing all those things. Cause if you don't, it's just going to get worse.
It is. And going back to the diet thing, like, my cholesterol is crazy and it shouldn't be. It's not fair, but it is what it is. And I hate it, but it's not high enough that I need medication, but it's high enough that I might need medication. And my diet is completely clean. I work out all the time. And my doctor told me, like everything else, it's a formula. And okay, so your cholesterol is high, but you have all these other things that you're doing, and so that makes it okay. So again, everything's connected. So if you want to stay away from the possibility of having to rely on all the pharmaceuticals and um, these other, foreign things, then you really do have to, as you get older, get more aggressive and more regimented, I
Yeah.
should say, in your routines, or else you are going to be like getting the little, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday pill box. And you might not have to do that if you can just do it naturally. So yeah, I'm a big, big, big fan of diet, exercise, and just, mindfulness
I
all together.
completely agree. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on. And I kind of want to wrap things up with 2 questions for you. The first is, looking back now on everything that you've done and the journey that you've been on, would you have changed anything? And if so, what, for the decisions that you made? And maybe we can just start there first.
Uh, the only thing, I wouldn't have known to change it. I would not have had that original doctor, but I wouldn't know to not have her. So I would not have picked my oncologist by his hair. I will go back to that. So as much as I love
Anybody
my,
listen, no oncologist for hair.
yeah, do not select your oncologist by his head of hair. Um, no, I
But
would have
pick your
probably,
PT based off their hair.
that's right. I would have probably gone, yeah, not done that. Then maybe I would have saved myself some grief surgery wise. But yeah, that's probably the one thing. But like, you wouldn't know that to change that. I would not change anything that I've done other than that. No. Mm-mm.
Okay. And then a closing remark of somebody who perhaps maybe is recently diagnosed with cancer, or even somebody who is looking for those intrinsic motivators to stay active and continue moving. What message would perhaps you would leave with them or say to them to continue uh, to keep moving and stay motivated for the future?
I would start with, you know your body better than anyone else, and you know yourself better than anyone else. So as far as the cancer thing, just pay attention. If something's nagging, uh, have it looked at. There's no shame in that. And what was nagging on me was not the cancer. It was just a fluke that it was found. But if I had not been attentive to that pain, I would not have gone to the chiropractor. I would not have gotten an X-ray. I would not have agitated for an MRI. So just know yourself. As far as the motivation is concerned, I go back to eh, your body is the only thing that you have, and your mind, they're connected, that it will carry you through. They are there with you all the time. And it can only be as good to you as you are to it. So I would hope that that would be a big enough motivator to want to stay healthy, both mind and body. If that is not enough, I would look at your immediate circle of loved ones and friends and ask yourself, would you want to be taken from them any sooner than you possibly had to be? And then just take that as the first circle of external motivation. And I'll just go back to, if it takes any more than that, you're just not ready.
Mm.
Um, you're not, I'm not saying you're not ready to start being active and working out, but you just may not be ready to take the dive into, total fitness or a healthy diet, universally healthy diet.
Yeah.
You have to do what works for you. So I don't know. I don't even know if that's what you're looking for.
No, I think it's great. I mean, end all, listen to your body. Um, find the things that are going to motivate you, whether it's getting a trainer or looking to family members of being like, hey, like I only have so much time on this earth, and I need to be around for them. Use that as a way to kind of continue on and stay active, or just start getting active. Start small and work your way through. If you need help, get a trainer or get a friend to keep you accountable, and
Right.
start your journey.
Right. You cannot serve others well if you're not serving yourself well.
Mm.
Self-care, I know, is a buzzword that's been going around that I just heard for the first time last year, but self-care has always been there. Um, and we really need to be cognizant of the fact that unless you take care of yourself, you cannot be 100% good for the people around you. So you really do have to take care of you. And by taking care of you, you're becoming a role model for the people around you. And you might be the motivator for someone else. And that is a good motivator.
So powerful. And again, I want to thank you so much for just coming on here and talking with me and sharing so much about yourself. And I truly appreciate it.